Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you live. Thank you for coming here. It's Mike Pallin, your friendly neighborhood real estate coach. That's right, R squared coaching. It's nice that you showed up. So, welcome to the metaverse, eh? This is Mark Zuckerberg's newest brainchild, calling this the metaverse. How about that? Today's subject, as you know, is should I sell now or wait? And I just read this really interesting book. You probably know the author, Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, he's written wonderful books. This one is called Talking to Strangers. Well, we're going to get that question, should I sell now or should I wait, from strangers, but we're also going to get it from our clients. Now, in the book, Mr. Gladwell talks about something called emotional labor. And he cites people like airline flight attendants who have to maintain that positive attitude in the face of unruly passengers who are griping and complaining, and sometimes with good reason. And he also talks about how the police have to have that emotional intelligence because they're doing emotional labor. It's a wonderful book, but it got me thinking about the emotional labor that we as real estate people have to do when advising our clients, especially the ones who've been paying attention to the media. Now, the media used to be thought of as the place to go to get information. The media informed me. I think more often than not, the media inflames people instead of informing them. And what happens when you inflame people? That's right, they start to have doubts. And doubts always cause procrastination. They've been hearing some crazy things about the real estate market for at least the last year, maybe even longer. And whenever people have doubts, they put on the emotional brakes and they start rethinking their plans. Is now really a good time to sell? I've been hearing some crazy things. So if you've been hearing this from your clients or your prospects, whether they're friends, family, people you know, or strangers, should I sell now or should I wait? I thought what I'd do today is go through 10, that's right, 10 Wickman ideas, dialogues, principles, things that you can use to help people come to a logical decision about what to do next. Okay? Anyway, that's the setup for today. You know, people hear things in the media, and at one point, they start to believe them. At one point, everyone believed the world was flat. That's why Columbus had so much trouble getting sailors for the Nina, not so much for the Santa Maria. Who wants to go first? Not me. I've heard it's flat out there. Well, anyway, what are you hearing and what are you thinking and what are you believing? Because for any of these dialogues or ideas or principles to work for you, you've got to believe it's a good time for people to sell. You know, not any time is a good time for people to sell. But oh my gosh, how much better do things need to get? Oh, that's right. Well, I know what you're thinking. But what if they have nowhere to go? Well, we'll address that. But let's start at the beginning, okay? Here's the first two words that Floyd would teach you to say when somebody says, should we sell now or should we wait? These two words, one of his moneymakers, you know, I would. Now, voice inflection and facial expression are very important in the delivery of those two words. You know, if it's I would, then you don't even believe it. Poker players make a fantastic living out of reading people's facial expressions and voice inflections. So you give stuff away. It's telling, as they say, a tell. Yeah, so it's with self-assurance. I would. And that might start questions. Well, why do you think that way? And any of these next 9 dialogues could help you answer the question. Here's number 2. Because of the equity that you've built, that's why. Now's a great time to sell. You know, we have an unprecedented appreciation Now, is it going to continue? Well, I don't know. But take a look back. People whose listing expired 3 or 4 or 5 years ago because they couldn't afford to sell, they've built fantastic amounts of equity. Some of my coaching students are having great success by using that as their prospecting. How about an equity analysis for you? Because over the last few years, prices have gone up an incredible amount, an unprecedented amount. So, because of the equity you've built, that's a reason why to cash in now. And of course, along with that, number three would be who knows what's going to happen next year? Now, who could have predicted this? Well, I don't know who could have, because the pandemic certainly has driven people crazy, and the lack of inventory, plus the demand. This demand for housing is not artificial. It's real. It's demographically driven. For the next 9, 10 years, the millennial generation is going to fuel the housing industry. So I don't know if it'll continue at double digits or even into the 20 percentage points a year in terms of appreciation, but who knows what's going to happen next year. The only two things we can't predict with any accuracy are natural disasters and government interference in the free enterprise market. And those two things are very difficult to predict. But it looks like things are going to continue with this demand and with this shortage of inventory, so prices are going to continue to rise. Maybe not as much as they have. But here's number four, the most compelling reason for someone to sell now, especially if they're going to buy. Cash is king. Think of this. You're a seller. You get two offers. One is subject to this and subject to that and subject to the other thing, especially financing. But one of the offers you get is all cash, quick closing. Boy, that's as close to a guaranteed sale as you can get. And if you go out into the marketplace to buy, and you're subject to selling your house, I don't care how hot the market is, you're asking a seller to trust that they take their house off the market on the chance that yours will sell in time for the right amount. Cash is king. Once you have cash, it makes you the most competitive buyer out there. So never discount the value of selling first, taking your equity and using that as a cash offer on your next home. It makes you the most competitive. And there's legions of stories of buyers who've been frustrated and disappointed over the last 18 months, making offer after offer after offer, only to lose out to a better offer, more often than not, a cash offer. Here's number five. What exactly are you waiting for? I know that's got to be said with tongue in cheek, but this is an historically great time to sell. You want conditions to be worse? You want to wait for interest rates to go up? By the way, they're at the highest they've been in 8 months. That's right. The Fed is making signals that they're going to stop helping the economy. I mean, really, folks, what are you waiting for? For things to be less attractive as a seller? I wouldn't wait if I were you. Now, I know it sounds like I'm a broken record, doesn't it? Oh, I don't want to feel that way. I know you don't either. Whenever somebody asks, oh yeah, you should sell now. Oh yeah, you should sell. No matter what the conditions are. That's why you believing in the power of this market is so important, so critical. So yeah, what are you waiting for? Here's number six. Things are so advantageous to sellers now that here's what some buyers are willing to do. They're willing to purchase your home as is. Floyd has always said you pay for maintenance either while you own it or when you sell it. Because if you don't pay while you own it, you're going to pay when you sell it. Well, how about all that deferred maintenance that you've not done? And the buyer's willing to take your house as is? There's conditions where That's not going to happen, and that's most conditions. But in this market, these unusual, advantageous seller's market conditions, you might find the buyer who's willing to let that deferred maintenance slip by and not make it a part of the deal. And here's number 7. If you need time to shop, by the way, I can give you all the time in the world you need to shop. What I can't prevent you from doing is overpaying for your next home because you're a contingent buyer and ending up owning 2 homes at once, making double payments. But what I can prevent you is not having enough time to shop. This market is so advantageous for sellers that I have seen rent back, even free rent, for up to 90 days after closing. Now, if you can't find a home in 90 days, if I can't find you a home in 90 days, I think the state's going to come and take my license away. Yeah, this is the rarest of markets where buyers are willing to let you stay in the house after closing until you find what you're looking for. What could be better than that? Here's number 8. If you sell now, you get me to work with as your buyer's agent. Never in the history of my business, not once, not ever, have I left a client homeless. Because I know how to coordinate a closing, a sale, and a purchase. That's what we do. You may have heard of this thing called the hidden inventory, the shadow inventory. Yeah, I'm going to turn over every rock. I'm going to knock on every door till I find you the home that you want to buy. Once you sell what you have. And I guarantee you'll never be homeless. You know what else? I can make it possible where you only have to move once. How about that? It's because I know how to coordinate a closing. I have never, ever left a client homeless. Number 9 is a famous Wall Street saying, buy through a rise. That's a rise in prices. Prices are rising. You buy into that. You cash in your equity and buy your next home. So it could be that prices start falling, but new homes keep going up. You know what's happening with construction? Yeah, that's right. The cost of building materials has doubled, tripled, even more in some cases. So while prices are appreciating, this is the time to sell and buy. Well, here's number 10, and it probably is the most important of all of them. And that is this. What are your plans? What are your plans, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? I want to take you back to what Floyd taught us to do when we sit at the kitchen table. You know, you ring the doorbell, you smile, you pay them a compliment, you take the kitchen table, you break the ice, and before you get started, you say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I just wanted to reassure you of something. That I didn't come over here tonight to talk you into listing with me just so I could have a listing. You know, anybody could do that. The only reason I'd want you to even consider hiring me is because you're convinced I'm the absolute best agent to help you folks go through with your plans. Are you familiar with the fall through list? Yeah, I took the liberty to bring a copy with me to show you tonight. These are people who were sitting at the kitchen table just like we are, and they put their home on the market and thought it was sold. They found the buyer. They hired the moving company, told their friends, their family, their neighbors. They started packing stuff up. They got all excited only to find out that something fell through the cracks between the time they found a buyer and the time they got to the closing table, and they had to come back on the market and start all over again. The only reason I'm showing you this is because these folks had 2 things in common, everyone on this list. And the first is they had to change their plans. But the second thing was this. In my opinion, they picked the wrong agent. So what are your plans? Do you want to sell now and move? What's your motivation level? How important is it to you to take this next step in where you live and in what you own? And if your plans are wait till next year, okay. We'll make the listing go active when you're ready. Remember rule number one, get ink. That's right. If you're there at the kitchen table, you get a signature. That's always rule number one. Doesn't matter when it goes active. Help people with their plans. As Floyd's personal mentor, Zig Ziglar, taught him, and Floyd taught us, and we teach everybody we can think of. You can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. Or as our core values state, make your client's number one goal your number one goal. Whatever their goal is, help them go through with their plans, and they'll always thank you for it. And while we're doing that, I want to thank you for showing up today.